I want to introduce to you a new series that I'm going to be doing for the next 2 weeks. This is a short series for me, a 2-week series. We came out of probably the longest series of the year, a 12-week series on the how-to guide to Christianity. And when I put this series together for 2 weeks, let me just tell you what I had in mind and what I want to accomplish in this series, because I believe there's some lies that we believe that we have to overcome. The name of this series is called Rags to Riches, A Journey to Generosity. And I want to unpack that for you. Let me tell you what I'm trying to accomplish in this series. Number one is this. I think a lot of us believe that this lie is, I do not possess anything that the world needs. And put that up if you would, guys. Put it up. There it is. I do not possess. I think a lot of us believe that I do not possess anything that the world needs. I want to overcome that lie in this series. Here's another lie that I think a lot of us believe, that my life is of little consequence. Like what I'm doing on this earth is a little consequence. It doesn't make a difference at all. Here's another one. What I do with my time and my resources does not matter. Like what I'm doing with my time and what I do with my stuff and what I do with my efforts, it makes no difference at all. And here's the biggest lie that I wanted to help us overcome, and that is this, that I cannot make a significant difference in the world, and we're going to do something, I think, hello. We're going to do something in these next 2 weeks and overcome those lies. We are in a huge season of blessing here at East Coast Believers Church. I mean, the hand of God is upon this church. It's not just that we're planting in Lake Nona. We just helped plant in Jacksonville, another church. We've been giving more than we've ever given away. But I'm more excited about this number right here than any other number that I could talk to you about. In the month of September, which is supposed to be a down month for churches, let me tell you what happened at East Coast Believers Church. Are you ready? And when I announce this, don't give God some little golf clap, okay? We're not on the 18th hole. It's quiet, everybody. Okay, here we go. Are you ready for this? Let me tell you what happened. We had, in the month of September, 104 salvations in our services. I mean, come on, give God glory for that. And I love this church because we figured out that, because we could never do this without you. I can't preach good enough to get 104 people saved, but you get it. We don't have a church that exists just for the church people. We figured it out. We have a church that exists for those that are far from God. In other words, we're not a museum for saints. We're a hospital for sinners, right? And so with that blessing, I mean, God's hand of blessing is strongly upon this church and what we're doing and all of our efforts. But with that blessing comes a responsibility. We have to steward God's hand upon our life. Whenever there's blessing in your life, you have to manage that. God expects you to steward that well. In other words, we are responsible for the blessing of God upon this church. And so typically, majority of my series that I do in this church are really more about like helping you grow in your walk with God, helping you grow in your relationships with one another. In other words, how to be a more successful Christian on this earth. Well, I'm going to take 2 weeks and sort of variate from there. And I'm going to go into 2 weeks on the mission of our church, why we exist, and how we can make a difference in the lives of our community and the lives of people around us. In other words, we're going to steward the blessing of God. And I think the hallmark of Christianity, let's just be honest, if you think about it, the hallmark of Christianity is generosity. And this church is generous, and not just with our finances, but in every arena, we're generous. Love our city. We're going to go out and buy 300 brand new pairs of shoes for kids. It'll be the only brand new pair of shoes they have for the whole year, but that's just one of the tiny things that you do all throughout the year. And the hallmark of Christianity is generosity. When you think about like strong Christians and people that have used their life to make a difference, immediately I think of Mother Teresa in Calcutta, who just gave up a life of luxury, and she chose to go reach people that nation rejected, and God honored her for it. I think of a modern day Christian that most all of you would know would be like Tim Tebow. You know, and Tim Tebow, who is real famous in Florida, and football player, now baseball player, ESPN analyst, and he's chosen to use his resources really to not just further his name and acquire wealth, but he's doing stuff like building hospitals. He's throwing a prom for special needs, which I hope we're working really hard on it. I think East Coast Believers might be one of the locations this year. We would like that, so we'll be praying about that. And so we should be known for something. And you know what? Christians are known for a lot of other things, but we should be known for something. I love this verse, John chapter 3 and verse 16. You know it. It says, this is how much God loved the world, that he did something. He what? He what? Oh, come on, that was me. This is how much God loved the world. Like God he gave his son, his one and only son. And Christians, guys, we should be known for something. And here it is, that we love people. But not just that we love people, but we make a difference. And the truth is, we were created to make a difference. But we live in a world that says your life is insignificant. We live in a world that says, hey, before you think of others, think about yourself. Before you're generous with other people, you make sure you take care of yourself. We live in a world that ingrains in your thinking to be survival of the fittest and take care of yourself and don't give and hold on to your stuff. You know, here's what we say: get all you can all you get, then sit on the can. That's what we do. So that'll hit some of you on the way home. You'll laugh. Oh, I got that. But that's the world that we live in. And so one of my jobs as a pastor is to help you think right about the world that you live in and how to interact in this world. And Christianity, people have made it so complicated. I could give you Christianity 101, just three. If you could just do these three things, then you would figure out Christianity. And here they are. Number one, if you would feed your spirit, if you would crucify your flesh, and renew your mind. That's Christianity in a nutshell. That's as hard as it gets. If you would just feed your spirit, like put God's word in it, pray a little bit, crucify your flesh, don't let your flesh do anything it wants. And then number three, renew your mind. Here's the reason why. Because the world is programming. Because if you could change the way you think, you'd change the way you act. If you change the way that you act, then you'd reap a different harvest in your life. And so the world's constantly programming you, trying to get you to think like them. Like, don't make a difference. Your life is insignificant. What you do doesn't matter. Your stuff, your resources, just think about yourself. And if you have anything left over, then you can think about other people. And the world's programming you that way. But the Bible's programming you differently. In fact, in Romans chapter 12 and verse 2, it says this. He said, don't copy the behaviors and the customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person, which I think all of us want to be transformed into a new person. How do you do it? Here it is, by changing the way you think. So that's what we're trying to do with this series. I want to give you a different perspective when it comes to being rich, when it comes to responsibility for the blessing of God. Because I, as a pastor, I have to steward the blessing. I'll just tell you this, last year, we gave away, in the year 2017, our church gave away triple, 3 times what the first year of our budget was for the entire budget. That's what we did. We saw well over 800 people saved in our services last year. This year, we've already surpassed that number over 100. So we're almost 1,000 people getting saved in our services this year. God's hands on us. He's made us blessed, and I got to steward that well. And that's what this series is all about. And so there's a verse, and this is where this series title came from. Rags to Riches, A Journey to Generosity. It came from a verse tucked away in the second epistle written to the Corinthians. And in chapter 8 and verse 9, it says this. You know the generous grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty he could make you rich. To which I know all of you are going to say, I know someone rich, but I'm not rich. If I were to ask you, are you rich? Raise your hand. Nobody in this congregation would raise their hand. 2 reasons why. Because either you don't think you're rich, and if you are rich, rich people never admit they're rich, especially in a church. But the Bible says that by his power, I'll just say this to tell you this, because I oftentimes think about this, and I'm going to get ahead of myself. Why on earth did God pluck me out of eternity, Norm, and place me on earth in Orlando, Florida in the year 2018. When he could have taken me anywhere in eternity, put me in a little village in northeast Thailand where I have to go walk to get my water and just live to eat, survive. Why did God, out of all eternity, put me right here on planet Earth in 2018? And why did he make me rich? Because you might not think you're rich, but I could give you some statistics that will tell you you are. And in fact, I'll say this. If your combined household income, this is your current number, if your combined household income is over $48,000, you are in the top 1% of the world's population of income earners, which is about, you are wealthier than more than 6.9 billion people on the earth. If your combined income for your entire home, and in fact, do you know that over 50% of the world, they have to walk or drive to get their water? In America, we just hit a switch. In fact, we got so much of it that we sprinkle it on the ground on purpose. We don't do it by accident. We set timers to do it while we're sleeping so it won't wake us. So our cars won't. We do that because we like the ground green. I mean, I'm telling you, you're rich. And so Paul wrote a letter to Timothy. It's in 1 Timothy chapter 6 and in verse 17. He wrote this pastoral epistle, and it's really written from a leader to a pastor. And he said this to Timothy. He said, teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust in their money. Why? Here's the reason why you're not proud or trust in your money. Because money is so unreliable. But your trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. And God said, hey, you can have it. In fact, I want you to have it, but just don't put your trust in it. And in fact, I want you to enjoy this life. I want you to have stuff. I want you to have homes and cars and boats. You can have all that stuff, and I want you to use it for your enjoyment. But, warning Timothy, tell them this, to use their money also to do good. Use it to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. By doing this, and this is really my motivation for you, by doing this, they will be storing up their treasure as a good foundation for the future, so they may what? Experience what? I want you to experience true life. I want you to experience the life that God has for you. And why do I have to teach this? Why do I have to renew your mind to these concepts? Because I'll tell you, number one, the world teaches you this. Live for yourself. The world says survive. Just do whatever you can do. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Number two, I have to teach this because I don't know if you know this or not. Statistically true by the government. The IRS says this. The more money you make, the less you give. Do you know the most generous people in our culture today are not the wealthy people? The most generous people in our culture today are those that live beneath the poverty line. Statistically, it's true. The more money you make, the less you give. And I also think this, distractions. Like we have distractions in this world. We're constantly being distracted. Madison Avenue, they have figured out a way to distract us. They have figured out a way. I mean, nowadays, if you live, it's kind of creepy and weird. We have one of these like little Siri things, whatever you call in your house. Alexa. The kids say, Alexa, play this song. And she just plays it. And they hear this, Alexa, stop. And they say, do it again. I say, you better stop, Alexa. I mean it. And I'll beat you. And not really. But the other day, we were talking about getting a new pair of shoes. Dina and me, I thought, I might get a new pair of shoes. And she said, and so I go and look on Instagram, social media a few hours later. And guess what? There is just lined up ad after ad for new shoes that I would like. Most amazing thing. They were shoes that I really, really wanted. And I really, really couldn't afford. But we live in distractions. And so the Bible says, teach people in this world. And we have to admit that we're rich. 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 9 says this. He says, you know, this is scriptural. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, though he was rich, for your sakes he became poor, that you through his poverty might be rich. And then he tells you what it's for. Why? So you'll be, a chapter later, he said in chapter 9 and verse 11, so you will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous. Which I think when I start preaching on these sort of things, people start thinking, well, what's he going to do? Take up an offering? And let me just, full disclosure, no offering, not doing any of that sort of thing. We're not building anything. We're not starting any campaign or anything. I just want you to experience true life. And the Bible says, warn people, teach them about the dangers of being rich. If you're in this room today, if you're watching online, I am telling you, you're rich. So what does the Bible say about dangers of being rich? I just want to lay them out for you. Some dangers of being rich, and then I'm going to end it with the last 10 minutes about how to overcome those dangers. If you're taking notes, write this one thought down. One of the dangers of being rich is this, discontentment. In other words, the more stuff a person has, the more we want. We just never get satisfied. And the Bible speaks to this. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5 and verse 10, it says, those who, and I want you to notice this language, those who not have money, not those who are successful, not those who are rich, but those who love money, like your relationship with money. Those who love money will never have enough. Here's what he said. If you love money, you'll never have enough of it. Here's how meaningless it is to think that wealth brings true happiness. Because the more you have, I love this verse, it's in the Bible, Solomon is so smart. The more you have, the more people come to help you spend it. You found that out to be true. Telemarketers, Sarah, they're just going to keep on coming after you. Family members. So what good is wealth? Except perhaps to watch it slip through your fingers. People who work hard sleep well, whether they eat little or much. But the rich seldom get a good night's sleep. It's not that we have money, but he said if you love money, he said this is an issue, is we get discontent. We're never content in anything, which I know you say, well, that would never happen to me. But maybe let me paint this scenario for you. Because we live in a country where they put out a new phone, a company called like Apple, they'll put out a new phone every year. And people will, not you, but some people you might know, that would actually do this. They would actually get a tent and sit outside the Apple store so they could be the first person to get the new phone. And then they'll wait in line for hours. And while they're in line waiting for hours to get a new phone that they really need, they'll take their phone that already works and they'll text people and tell them they're in line to get the latest, greatest, newest iPhone. All right, but nobody here would do that. But do you know there are some people, in America even, they have a room in their house. It's a room, and it's a special little room, and it's just for clothes. And for shoes, and for jewelry, and it's packed high, top to bottom, a little room. And they'll walk in that room sometime. And like this morning maybe even. They'll walk in there and go, I have nothing. I have nothing to wear. To which my kids sometimes come in, Daddy, I have nothing to wear. I say, that's a first world problem. Or how about this? Because I know nobody in this church would ever do this. We drive under the thought of an upgrade. We think, I deserve an upgrade. So we drive a perfectly well-running, nice vehicle to this car lot. And this car lot is filled with other cars just like the one you're driving. And you will actually drive there, walk up to the owners of that car lot and hand them the keys to your car. And then you will take some more money out of your checking account or savings account, and you will give them more money. So you can drive away with a different car that does the same thing as the car that you drove in with. We call that an upgrade. And we just leave, and we think that's normal. These are dangers of being rich. Here's another danger of being rich. It's a false sense of security. I need to be financially secure. So nothing bad will ever happen to me. And let me interject here. Your pastor, has a savings account. I have retirement. I have life insurance. I'm not opposed to any of that. But we have this concept for rich people that we're going to be, once we get a certain number in our bank account, we're going to be financially secure. And you know what I've noticed along the way? That the older I get, the more that number keeps moving north. Like I just want a little bit more. And we just want to be financially secure. So here it is. So nothing bad will ever happen to us. Proverbs 18 says it like this. It's a false sense of security. The rich think of their wealth as a strong defense. Notice what it says. Keyword is imagine. They imagine it to be a high wall of safety. Here's another issue with the dangers of being wealthy, of being rich. We have a false identity. And we think if I could just drive a certain kind of car, then people would know that I'm rich. Or if I could just live in a certain neighborhood, then people would know that I'm rich. If I could just wear a certain brand of a shoe or clothes, then people will think that I'm rich. And we put our identity in our stuff and in our things. And the Bible warns us about this. And in fact, in Romans chapter 12 and verse 3, Paul here writing to the church at Rome, he said this. He said, because of this privilege and this authority that God gives you, that God has given me, I give you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are. He says, hey, don't get a false identity with a bank account balance. These are the dangers of being rich. To which, when I share about this, I know what you're going to think. Pastor, where are you going with this? Why are you doing this? Are you going to take up an offering? Are you going to guilt me into giving? And I'm going to tell you, I am not doing any of that. You guys are so generous already. And by the way, I found out guilt is not really a good motivator anyways for giving. Because it's not even in the Bible to do it that way. There's the president texting you. And answer it. I dare not say anything political. I'll wait for you, President Trump. Go ahead, finish that off. So what do we do with this? And why are we teaching this? And I want to wrap up this simple message today. And I'll pick it up next week with a couple thoughts of how to overcome the dangers of being rich. Here's the reason why. 1 Timothy 6. He said, teach those who are rich in this world. Like, teach those. Why? And here's my motivation for this. I'm not taking up an offering. Don't want anything from you. All our bills are paid. We're not behind on a single thing. We just planted a new campus, another church this year, new campus this week. You've done all that in advance. 100 and some people saved last month. All those are being taken care of, paid for. Our missions is exploding all over the world. He says, teach those who are rich in this world. Why? So this is my motivation. I want you to experience true life. I want to overcome some of those lies that my life doesn't make a difference. My resources can't make a difference. So how does the Bible say to overcome these issues? And here's what I want you to do. I want you to enjoy life and not be guilty. I want you, he said, teach those who are rich in this world. Enjoy. God gave you all this for your enjoyment. But teach them to be rich in good deeds, not just rich in bank account balances. So I'll say it to you like this. How do you enjoy life, be rich, and yet not be guilty? How do you do that? I'm going to give it to you right now. 4 things. Take your notes, write down number 1. And that is this, is be grateful. Like, we are thankful. Be grateful for what God has given you. Not that I earned it all. I work so hard. I got a college degree. I work hard. I put all my efforts into it, so I've earned it. And we just forget that God's hand is upon our life. Everything we have in our life is because God blessed us with it. I'll be honest with you, because I'm in the people business, and I don't get to meet with everybody in the church about what's going on in their life. But I see a report every week of everything that's going on. Whoever's meeting with you, I get to read sort of a snapshot of it, and I might advise them a little bit on what's going on. But what I know is there's a lot of people struggle in family. People are struggling in marriage and kids and situations like that. And so sometimes people ask me, hey, Norm, how's it going in your life? How are the kids? And I usually give a response like this. Well, kids, life, it's ups and downs. And I got to thinking as I was sort of jotting down these thoughts, I got to quit saying that, because I'll be honest with you. Our family right now, we are on fire for God. Life is great. My kids are living for God. My kids are serving God. And it's not because I'm such a great parent. It's not because Nina's a great parent. It's because God's hand's upon our life. People say, how's marriage going? Marriage. No, I'm going to be honest with you. That was for our first year of marriage. But we're 24 years into this thing, and our marriage is red hot on fire right now. It's the best it's ever been. In God's hand. In fact, it's so good, I'm even thinking about talking Dean into having number 6. But I was working on it yesterday, but I tell you, my charm will wear her down. I know it. And she says stuff like this. When I ask her, I say, you ever thought about having another? She goes, do you know how old you are? I'm like, well, that's why I have older kids. They'll take care of them. I just want to make them. And but we got to be grateful. Listen. Our church, after the first year, we started in February. In February, after the first year of our opening, on Christmas Eve, we had a little under 100 people in our church. Last month, we saw over 100 people born again in 1 month. I'm just telling you, I'm not going to apologize for God's hand of blessing upon this church. But I'm going to be grateful for it. I'm going to be grateful for it and give Him all, because I'm not good enough to do this. Only God is. And there is a story in the Old Testament of a guy named King David. And King David started off, as you guys know, he was a warrior. He was a shepherd. He was a warrior, and he was battling, and he wanted to do something great for God before he died, and he wanted to build a temple, and God said, hey, I'm not going to let you build this temple, but I'm going to let your son build it, but I'm going to let him build it, but you're going to pay for it. And so David gave an offering. And you want to know how much his offering was he gave? He gave over a ton of gold. Over a ton. They did some people have done some numbers and adjusted for inflation. That would be the equivalent of giving over a $1 billion offering today. That's what King David gave to build the temple that he wasn't even going to use. And when he gave his offering, this is what he said in 1 Chronicles chapter 29. Then David praised the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly. He said, Lord, the God of our ancestor Israel, may you be praised forever and ever. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness, the power, the glory, the victory, and the majesty. Everything in the heavens and on the earth is yours, O Lord, and this is your kingdom. We adore you as the one who is over all things. Wealth and honor come from you. Come on, from you alone. For you rule over everything. Power and might are in your hand. And at your discretion, people are made great and given strength. But, oh God, we thank you and praise your glorious name. But who am I? Who am I? Who are my people that we could give everything to you? Everything we have has come from you, and we give you only what you first gave us. I live with this thought. In fact, if you go back into that room there, right behind that screen, there's a music room, and then across the hall from there is a room where I prepare to come out and preach, and I usually pray in there, and there's like some coffee and Cokes and stuff in there, and I walk out of that room, and when you look on the wall, there's a little plaque that says something that would just blow you away. It is a privilege for me, and it's for the musicians and for me. It is a privilege for me to stand on this stage. Because we know this isn't us. Only God could do this. So be grateful. Number 2, you want to overcome dangers of being rich? Here's something else. Number 2 is intentional generosity. And what does that mean? I want you to notice that language, intentional, not just generous, but intentional generosity. And here's what it is. Before I spend, I will give. It's okay to spend. It's okay to have. It's okay to have stuff. But what God is saying is, and this is the principle of the tithe. The principle of the tithe is not just a percentage number, although it means the tenth, it means the 10%. But the principle of it is that you give God first and you spend on your leftovers. And so it's not spend and then give God your leftovers. You're missing the concept and the principle of the tithe. The tithe is, it's not a leftover thing for God. It's God first and you get what's left over. And it's not, and God doesn't mind you spending, and God doesn't mind you buying stuff and having stuff. And said, in fact, he said, I don't want you rich so you can enjoy this life. He doesn't mind that, but what he's interested in is he doesn't want your leftovers, he wants you first. And that's what the tithe is. It's not so much a number, a percentage, as it is a priority thing. Jesus said these words, and these are just in the Bible. Matthew chapter 6, he said, for where your treasure is, your heart will be also. Like, where do you want your heart to be? And he says, wherever you give your first, that's where your heart's going to be. If you want your heart at SunTrust, if you want your heart at Dillard's, if you want your heart at, at Target, well, I mean, now listen, we give 10%, but I think 90% Target gets it all. I'm not going to lie to you. But where do you want your heart to be? And I love these words of Jesus. In Acts 20, it says, you'll likely not go wrong here if you keep remembering that our Master said, you're far happier giving than getting. Guys, what I'm saying is, if you honor God, you will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. I know what I would say about it is intentional generosity means generosity leads, feelings follow. Choices lead, feelings. That was in the Freedom Curriculum, where it says choices lead, feelings follow. I would say that in every area of in your marriage. Man, if you're not feeling love, go back and do what you did when you first loved that person. Write the notes. You don't feel like it, do it. Go on dates, do it. Then the feelings will follow. When it comes to forgiveness, man, I don't forgive because I want. Listen, I've never forgiven anybody because I wanted to. I do it because my Master requires it of me. And you know what I found out? If I'll live by that choice, feelings follow. Same thing goes with generosity. Choices lead, feelings follow. Let me wrap it up with this thought. I'm done. Number 3 is this. Don't put your hope in provision, but put your hope in the provider. Don't put your hope in your stuff, but in the provider. We put our hope in our provision, it's unreliable. But put it in the provider. And why do we talk about this? And you know why I talk about this? It's because Jesus talked about this. You might not know this. Do you know what Jesus talked about most when he walked on this earth? The things I'm talking about right now. Do you know that in the New Testament, the word believe is in there 272 times? The word pray is in there 371 times. The word love, it's getting better, is in there 714 times. Do you know the word give is in there 2,161 times? Do you know why? Because the chief competitor for your soul is not Satan, it's this world system, it's stuff. Because no one ever goes, you know what, I'm sort of vacillating. Do I want to be a God worshiper or Satan worshiper? I don't know. Like, do I want to do this Christian thing, or do I want to be a Satanist? I'm not really sure. Like, which side do I want to be? Or no one ever goes, do I want to go to heaven? Oh, that's pretty good. Streets of gold, mansions, food, no people. I want to go to hell. Hot, weeping and gnashing of teeth. Heaven, hell, I don't know. Am I a Halloween guy or am I a Christmas guy? You know what I mean? Like, what am I? No one ever does that because it's so simple. But what it is it's stuff or God. And what Jesus said is this: you can't serve both. You can't have it both ways. You can't serve mammon and God. He didn't say you can't have it. He just said you can't love it. I'm talking about rags to riches, intentional generosity. One of my weird things about being a pastor, you wouldn't think this to be true. One of the things, I love being pastor. I'm having the best time of my life. 51 years old, and we are living a dream right now. And I just love what I do. And one of the weird things that I actually enjoy doing is funerals. And I think why I like doing them is because you have a captive audience. People are actually listening. Whereas at a wedding, they're like, can you get this over with, please? The only one that cares about it is the bride and the mother of the bride. Everyone else is like, get it over with, will you? But at a funeral, they're really listening. And I just did a funeral a couple weeks ago for my roommates in college. His sister-in-law. It was a unique funeral. The people got up and spoke it was outside. People got up and spoke. And what happened there happens at every funeral. People get up and talk about two things, typically. Their love of God and their love of family. Nobody gets up and goes, you know what? I'm just so impressed by them. They worked so much overtime and acquired so much wealth. No one ever says, man, he or she was one incredible deal closer. They don't do that. They talk about their love of God and their love of family. And this is the series, Rags to Riches, a journey to generosity so we can experience true life, the life that God has for you. Don't believe the lie that what I do doesn't make a difference in this world. Everything about you has the ability to change lives of people around you through generosity.